Game 2. There we go. Alrighty. Team Black again. What do you do? Hit him with a French. The French. Alright, follow through. Swing the bat completely around for you baseball fans. Okay, I just kibitzed a game where we had this, the advanced French. Queen b6. If you play the French advance, you better be prepared to have pressure on that square. On d4. I like to take this approach. This queen b6, bishop d2 line. You notice in that game I kibitzed, just a few minutes ago? One of the very first things I pointed out was that this bishop has seen better days. He was the bad bishop. Well, I'm trying to get rid of what's bad. And then what will I be left with? Right? Exchange off the bad. You're left with just a good guy here. And this is also just good. It's good for a couple of reasons, right? One, it's just the bad guy of the two. And also, I have less space. Since white has a pawn established on e5, I'm welcome to, in other words, I'm welcome to exchanging a set of pieces off. So if one reason was not good enough for you, now you have two. So the other thing to question is, should I take the bishop and help white develop the queen? Or should I move forward with just my development? I don't know. Knight c6, bishop takes bishop, pawn takes pawn, and my candidate moves. I want to be a bit cautious about pawn takes. If I develop my knight, let's say here, I'm obstructing my bishop's view. I would like to recapture my bishop. Maybe I should just, maybe I'm okay with helping white develop like that. And I think now, yeah, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to take here because I don't want to run into, I want to maybe make use of b4 one day. And the other thing I want to do is not run into pawn takes, bishop takes, b4 stuff, and I start getting kicked around. So now without c3 around, there is no support for a b4 advance. The current state in the center is, of course, that it's now closed, it's locked, so play will ensue on the wings, the c file in particular, and then the last thing really for me to solve is what to do with these minor pieces. My queen knight would typically like to go to c6, but this knight has to take 2 steps before he could really be in a decent position. So the way I'm going to organize my development is to bring my king knight to c6, my queen knight to d7, or I don't know, maybe there's thoughts of a6 at one point. I think I'll reserve this guy's options. So this knight is pretty much going to go here. I'll have a second guy hitting at d4, second piece hitting at d4. And I wonder if I could devote a moment to what? I wonder if I could devote a moment to playing h6 before the bishop could play to g5. I was saying earlier that I'm welcome to piece exchanges, but maybe only to a certain extent. Because if the dark square bishops come off, well, maybe I don't want them. Maybe I don't want to exchange dark square bishops. Because why? Why would I want to not exchange dark square bishops? I think for as long as this guy remains around, I'm allowed to do what? I'm allowed to maybe enter positions where I have maybe a good versus bad bishop, or a good knight versus a bad bishop. So I feel that this guy is, in some sense, a liability. Now, I was thinking knight c6 and then h6, but you know what? There's something I'm a bit fearful of. It's the knight making use of g5, and then the queen coming out to h5. I think if the knight gets to g5, he's not so easily kicked with h6. Knight g5, h6, there's queen h5, and the pawn is in a pin. And additionally, there's pressure on f7. I could play g6, but then I'm making additional weaknesses. If I have to... Okay, whoa. Whoa. Now that is what you call a move I did not expect. Okay, this is... This scares me. Let that be known. That's my first thought. It's a move that simply scares me. Queen takes, knight takes. I can't defend both of these squares so easily. So I think what I'm needing to do is allow my opponent to just smash up the queenside structure. But I think I'll still be okay. Or I have hopes that things are going to be okay. Knight here. Knight here I could block. Queen takes, knight takes. But again, knight playing here, I can't defend both. I could block with my queen, however. Queen here, queen takes, pawn takes. Then my c-pawn becomes a liability. Would I be able to exchange him off? Oh, the questions. Where are the answers? Where are the answers to all these questions I'm throwing out there? Just going to go with that. If the knight now follows here, I could bump my king up to d7. I'm perfectly fine with what? I'm perfectly fine with being uncastled, that's for sure. This is exactly where I would like to be as the endgame approaches, as the position simplifies. This is fine. My king, typically, another thing that is he would like to be on a light square of the two choices he has with light and dark. Off the dark square, since my opponent has that bishop. I don't have another square for this knight. This is the number one guy that I want to get rid of. Get rid of this knight. My plan pretty much here is going to be what? Bishop up, because he's very limited as well. I'm pretty much running with the moves where I have the least amount of flexibility. Let's go. Rook on h to c8. So that now what? So that now if my king needs to run, he could come back here. If he's ever forced and if he's ever in check, he could run back and not be interfering with the rook's coordination. If I went with this rook, that could maybe be a problem down the line. Light squares have been weakened. This a6 move I didn't touch on. It rules out any pieces getting to b4, but what it does allow is maybe a knight to sink itself in on b3. These pawns, one could argue, are a weakness, but are they really a weakness if you know, my opponent can't exploit them? I think it could turn out to be quite all right. Knight a5 eyes both of these squares, and I think it's the thing to do. However, do I just play here right now? The knight's going to have to exchange itself off. Let's do that right now. Pre-move this. He pretty much had to go there. There was no retreat. Retweet. That's when you know you're on Twitter too much. Not retreat. Retweet. Okay, do I double rooks or play to a5? Okay, that's the big plan. That's the big question, I should say. Oh, wait a second. No. I'm going to get rid of one of my double pawns. I'm going to play here. I have enough support for it. And if the knight plays to b3, I'm not afraid. Because of just b6. Cancels out the knight. So this is like a little slinky here. The head moves and then the tail moves right after it. All right, do I stop this? Do I take a moment out? I think I do, because if this advance is really to get in, then I want the g file to open up. Maybe there's some checks against the king at some point. Okay, well, we're just gonna have a time issue, but I think, well, if I play here, maybe the knight could decide to shift gears and come over and make use of g5. So I was thinking h5 to stop g4, make this idea not so great anymore, but okay, I'm just gonna go with this. And now last question is really, oh, I should have considered maybe rook takes first. I don't think it's gonna matter, is it? Time's up, and I didn't have too much time as well. Okay, good game. Let's go back here and let's flip the board and see how either one of us could have improved. So French advance. What is it that white could be doing different? Now, one thing I think to be aware of is when you see black going with this idea, if you're the side who plays the French, and let's get more specific, if you play the French advance and you're seeing this idea of trying to eliminate the light square bishop, anticipate b5. You're pretty much, as black, I'm saying I want to get this in, and it's a reason, of course, to not run with the very natural looking knight c6, because it interferes with the bishop b5 move. You simply can't do that if you're developing your queen knight before you go with bishop d7 to b5. What I'm getting at is that sometimes I've run into bishop b5 being met with c4, and things become very tricky, very, very tricky. For example, maybe even in this position, after I play that, you could consider c4. It's, I think, a temporary pawn sacrifice, and there's some mental calculation that you'd have to run forward with right now as I go over these moves. But after c4, I'm not sure which one is best captured. Let's just say bishop takes pawn, bishop takes bishop, pawn takes. The idea here for white is to not exchange this d pawn for the c pawn, but rather the d pawn for the e pawn. So by pushing to d5, white has to take, otherwise I think this pawn is just too dangerous getting to d6 and such. So pawn takes, queen takes. After the smoke clears, the queen is centrally located on d5. She'd be hitting one of the doubled pawns that are on c4, and looking more long term, when you have the d pawn exchanging itself off for this e pawn, white then has a 4 versus 3 majority on the king side. So it's just something to be aware of, this c4 advance, with the continuation eventually being d5. We didn't have that. Things were much more quiet, and I say that because we had a static structure, a closed center, and it was just trying to get pieces to good squares. And I think, well, initially the queen b5 move scared me, but I guess my response is going to be quite all right. And the doubled b pawns, okay, they look ugly, but I don't know if you could really exploit them. So maybe it isn't best. But let's have a look at something else, because this thing that I was talking about earlier, stopping the knight coming from g5, coming to g5, maybe you could get that in. No, I didn't really give you a moment to do that. Like, the knight isn't really even threatening to do that right now because of the pressure on this pawn. But that's just still another idea to be aware of. The knight moving out and the queen coming here. We didn't run into that situation, but anyhow, double b pawns. I think black is fine right now. Not really an issue. And again, with this bishop around, I'm still in a position as black now to enter good versus bad bishop or good knight versus bad bishop. I wanted to keep this guy around, and he was still around to the very end of the game, but by this time we had the flag falling, the time running out. So all right, good game to you.